The moment Vena stepped off the transport ship, she knew Earth was nothing like home. The air was thick with scents she couldn't identify, the sky was a strange blue, and the people, so many humans, moved in ways that made her nervous. Loud, expressive, unpredictable. She had studied their culture before arriving. The Zainari exchange program had prepared her for everything: languages, history, customs. But nothing in the data files had captured the sheer chaos of a human city. "Welcome to Earth, Vena." She turned toward the voice. A human male approached, his stormy gray eyes filled with something she couldn't quite decipher. "Amusement?" "I'm Darren," he continued. "I'll be your cultural guide while you're here." Vena hesitated. His casual stance, relaxed smile, and warm tone all signaled something unusual, something that went against every Zainari social rule. Then he did the unthinkable. He extended his hand. Her entire body stiffened. Was this a test? Some strange human deception? On Zainari worlds, physical contact between strangers was strictly forbidden. A touch signified deep trust, a bond that took years to form. Yet this human expected her to take his hand within seconds of meeting him. Darren must have noticed her hesitation because his smile widened. "It's just a handshake. A greeting." She cautiously reached out, letting her fingers brush his palm before withdrawing so fast it was barely contact at all. He laughed. "That was the most careful handshake I've ever seen." Heat crept up her face. "I didn't want to get arrested." That only made him laugh harder. "You're not going to get arrested for shaking hands, Vena." She wasn't convinced. Humans had the strangest laws. Or rather, no laws at all. As they walked through the city, she tried to make sense of her surroundings. Vehicles sped past without a strict formation, lights changed colors without warning, and the people, they spoke so freely. Some shouted, some laughed, and others walked arm in arm like it was normal to invade each other's space. Vena's fingers twitched at her sides. Every instinct told her that none of this was right. Then she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. Two humans were arguing in public. Their voices rose, their hands waved wildly, their expressions twisted in frustration. Yet, no one intervened. No enforcement officers arrived to detain them. She turned to Darren, horrified. "Are they not breaking the law?" "What law?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Public disturbance. Disorderly conduct. Challenging authority." Her voice was hushed, but her panic was real. Darren blinked. Then he grinned. "Vena, humans argue all the time." She stared at him in disbelief. "And that's allowed?" "Yeah." He shrugged. "It's called freedom." That word, freedom, sent a shiver through her. It was an abstract concept in Zainari culture, something that existed in history records but had long been abandoned. And here it was, happening in front of her like it was perfectly normal. Her heart pounded. She had so much to learn about this planet. Vena followed Darren through the bustling streets, her sharp eyes scanning the bizarre behavior of humans. Everything they did seemed reckless. It was as if Earth operated on an entirely different set of rules, or perhaps none at all. She spotted a group of people running along a paved path, their faces red with exertion, their clothes damp with sweat. Panic shot through her. Were they fleeing from something? An attack? A predator? She grabbed Darren's arm. "What are they running from?" He glanced at the joggers and chuckled. "Nothing. They're exercising." Vena's mouth parted slightly. "They are exhausting themselves for no reason?" "Well, not no reason. It keeps them healthy, makes them feel good." Her brows furrowed. "They voluntarily put their bodies under stress? And this is normal?" "Completely." She shook her head, unable to process such nonsensical behavior. On Zainari worlds, running was strictly for emergencies. Fleeing. Pursuit. War. To waste energy in such a way was not only irrational, it would be considered a crime. But the absurdity of humans didn't stop there. A loud, excited roar echoed through the air, making her flinch. Vena turned toward a massive open arena where thousands of humans were packed together, screaming in unison. The large screens displayed figures colliding into each other, chasing a strange object. She stared in horror. A public brawl? And they're allowing it? Darren followed her gaze, amused. That's a soccer match. A match? It's a game. Vena blinked rapidly. That is not a game. They are attacking each other. And look at the spectators. They are cheering for this violence. He laughed. It's competition. It's exciting. On my world, this would be an act of warfare. Well, here, it's entertainment. She turned back to the game, watching as two players crashed into each other and fell. Vena sucked in a breath, waiting for law enforcement to intervene. But instead, the fallen player stood back up, shook himself off, and kept running. No punishment. No consequences. Just play. This planet is insane, she whispered. Darren grinned. You haven't seen anything yet. As they walked through the city, Vena noticed even more outrageous human activities. People climbed up walls with their bare hands. A group of children leaped into a pile of leaves just to scatter them. Two adults laughed as they raced each other down the sidewalk for no apparent reason. She crossed her arms. You mean to tell me none of this is regulated? Darren shrugged. Why would it be? Because people could get hurt. Because there are no clear rules. Because it is pure chaos. His expression softened. That's just how humans are. We explore, push limits, try things. That's what makes life exciting. Exciting. That word sat strangely in her mind. Zainari culture valued control, precision, order. Excitement was dangerous. It led to unpredictability, to mistakes. Yet, as she watched the humans run, laugh, play, and challenge each other, something inside her stirred. Were they reckless? Absolutely. But they also looked happy. As night fell, Vena found herself in a place even more unbelievable than the chaotic city streets, an event humans called a carnival. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but it wasn't this. Bright lights flashed in every direction, spinning wheels of color and movement. Strange, intoxicating scents filled the air, fried food, melted sugar, something warm and buttery. Laughter echoed from all sides, loud and unrestrained. Darren walked beside her, watching her expression with obvious amusement. All right, Vena. Welcome to human entertainment. She barely heard him. Her silver eyes were locked on the most horrifying sight she had ever witnessed. People were being flung into the air. Metal contraptions hurled them in wild directions, spinning, twisting, flipping them upside down. Their bodies dangled unnaturally, as if caught in a storm, yet instead of screaming in terror, they were laughing. She froze. Darren, she whispered urgently, those people are in distress. He followed her gaze. Oh. That's a roller coaster. Her fingers clenched. They're being thrown around at impossible speeds. Surely this is an accident. We must alert the authorities. Darren's grin widened. No accident. They paid to be on that ride. She turned to him in complete disbelief. They what? They enjoy it. It's fun. Her mind could not process this. They are willingly enduring extreme physical trauma? Well, when you put it like that, that's illegal. Darren burst out laughing. No, Vena. It's entertainment. Her breath came in sharp, controlled exhales. That cannot be classified as entertainment. That is a survival situation. But Darren was already pulling her toward another ride. Let's start with something easier. Moments later, Vena found herself on a carousel, a rotating platform where humans sat atop colorful artificial creatures. The movement was gentle, the music soft, the wind brushing against her face in a way that was strangely pleasant. She hesitated before speaking. This is tolerable. Darren laughed. Tolerable. She gave a reluctant nod. I am not terrified. That is an improvement. As the ride continued, she let herself relax. The steady rhythm, the twinkling lights, the laughter around her. It all felt strangely light. She turned toward Darren. He was watching her, his gray eyes warm, his smile softer than usual. Her chest tightened. This is the first time I've seen you enjoy something, he murmured. She opened her mouth to deny it. But the words wouldn't come. Was he right? For the first time since arriving on Earth, she wasn't thinking about rules. She wasn't analyzing or criticizing. She was simply feeling. The realization unsettled her. Darren nudged her shoulder lightly. You know, Vena, fun isn't illegal. Her fingers gripped the edge of her seat, her voice barely above a whisper. It is where I come from. Darren's expression changed. He didn't laugh this time. He just watched her, quiet, thoughtful. The ride slowed to a stop, but something inside her had already started moving. Something she wasn't sure she could stop. Vena sat on a bench, staring at the carnival lights flickering against the night sky. The distant laughter of humans filled the air, their carefree energy clashing with everything she had been taught. Darren sat beside her, arms stretched over the back of the bench, completely at ease. All right, he said, glancing at her. Be honest. You liked it. She hesitated. The word like was difficult to admit. It implied acceptance, and that meant questioning everything she had believed about order, control, and caution. It was less unpleasant than expected. Darren smirked. High praise. She exhaled slowly, her gaze drifting over the people around them. Humans were so open. They held hands, laughed loudly, touched freely. A young couple nearby leaned against each other, their foreheads pressed together in a silent, intimate moment. Vena's stomach tightened. Humans have no sense of personal space. Darren followed her gaze and chuckled. Not really. We like being close. She frowned. Physical contact is reserved for only the most trusted individuals in Zainari culture. Yet humans seem to touch each other constantly. Because we enjoy it, he said simply. She turned to him, confused. What do you gain from it? Darren considered her question. Comfort. Warmth. Connection. His voice softened. It feels good to be close to someone. Vena swallowed. That was dangerous thinking. Emotions could cloud judgment. Attachments led to vulnerability. She had spent her whole life avoiding both. But then, something warm brushed her hand. She stiffened. Darren's fingers barely skimmed hers, light, unthreatening, waiting. Not taking. Not demanding. Just offering. Her pulse jumped. What are you doing? An experiment, he said lightly. I'm testing if Zainari can tolerate casual contact. Her instincts screamed at her to pull away. But for some reason she didn't. Instead, she studied the sensation. His skin was warmer than hers, rougher, textured in a way she wasn't used to. The contact was so small, so insignificant, yet it sent an odd shiver through her. It wasn't unpleasant. It was strange, foreign, fascinating. Darren tilted his head, watching her reaction. Still think humans are reckless? Absolutely. Her voice was steady, but her heart was not. His smirk returned. Then you'll really love what I'm about to show you next. She gave him a wary look. What now? He stood and held out his hand. Dancing. Her breath caught. That's illegal, he teased. She clamped her mouth shut. He grinned. Come on, Vena. Live a little. For a moment, she didn't move. The weight of habit, duty, and discipline pressed down on her, urging her to say no. But against all reason, she placed her hand in his. And for the first time in her life, she let herself break a rule. The music pulsed through the air, a rhythmic beat that vibrated in Vena's chest. Humans swayed, spun, and laughed around her, moving as if their bodies instinctively understood the sounds. Dancing. Unstructured movement. Physical expression. It was a concept so foreign, so unnecessary in Zainari culture. Yet here, on Earth, it was a source of joy. Darren led her toward the dance floor, his grip on her hand warm and steady. Relax, he said, his voice smooth. Just follow my lead. She stiffened. I do not see the purpose of this. He chuckled. Not everything needs a purpose, Vena. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, Darren placed his other hand gently on her waist. Her entire body locked up. Too close. Too much contact. Her breathing shallowed as she stared up at him. His face was calm, his gray eyes watching her carefully, giving her time to adjust. He wasn't forcing her, just waiting. A test. She had passed every challenge life had thrown at her. Strict discipline. Countless trials. Years of training to master control over her emotions, her body, her instincts. But this was something else entirely. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as Darren slowly guided her into motion.
Step. Turn. Sway.
His movements were easy, effortless. Hers were stiff, awkward. But he didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He simply moved with her, adjusting, patient. The warmth of his hand on hers, the solid presence of his body close to hers, it should have felt suffocating. But it didn't. It felt safe. Something fragile, unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. Darren leaned in slightly, his voice low. You're doing good. Vena swallowed hard. I am not certain what I am doing. That's the point, he murmured, his breath brushing her cheek. You're letting go. Her fingers clenched on his shoulder. Letting go. That was not the Zainari way. Yet in that moment, surrounded by music, wrapped in Darren's warmth, something in her wanted to try. So she did. She let him lead, allowed her body to follow, stopped overanalyzing every step. The rhythm sank into her skin, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, she moved without fear. Darren's grip tightened, his gaze locked on hers. There was something different in his eyes now, something deeper. The world around them blurred. It was just him, just her, and nothing else mattered. The music slowed, but the world inside Vena felt like it was still spinning. Darren's hand lingered on her waist, his thumb brushing against the fabric of her uniform. His other hand still held hers, fingers wrapped around hers like a promise. She should have stepped away. She didn't. Her heart pounded, an unfamiliar, thrilling rhythm. She had spent her whole life resisting emotion, rejecting unnecessary closeness, following the rules. But this moment felt right. Darren tilted his head, studying her expression. His voice was quiet. You're not running away. I do not wish to. Her own admission startled her. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his lips. His storm-gray eyes darkened slightly, something new flickering in their depths. Something warm. Something dangerous. He lifted her hand, brushing his thumb lightly over her knuckles. The touch sent a sharp pulse through her, a strange, exhilarating jolt that she should not have enjoyed. But she did. And Darren saw it. He stepped closer, his voice softer now, more intimate. You're different than when I first met you. She swallowed. I have learned much. He smirked. And what's the most important thing you've learned? She hesitated. Her instincts urged her to say something logical, something safe. But she didn't want to be safe. Not tonight. Not with him. She let her fingers tighten around his. That humans are not as reckless as I once believed. Darren chuckled. High praise from you. She wasn't finished. I have also learned that freedom is not chaos. His smirk softened. No. It's about choosing your own path. She exhaled, feeling the weight of his words settle inside her. Choosing. Darren shifted even closer, his warmth pressing against her, the space between them disappearing. Her breath caught. Would he kiss her? Would she let him? The thought should have terrified her. But it didn't. His hand brushed up her arm, slow, testing. You can tell me to stop, he murmured. She knew that. She also knew she wouldn't. Vena tilted her chin up, heart hammering. I do not wish for you to stop. Darren's breath hitched. His fingers slid along her jaw, gentle, reverent. And then, his lips touched hers. Soft. Warm. A slow, perfect pressure. Her world tilted. Every law, every rule, every belief she had ever followed shattered. And she let them. Because for the first time in her life, Vena wasn't just surviving. She was living.